Welcome to West Edmonton Christian Assembly in Edmonton, Alberta, as we are here together with what could very well be one of the real power couples of the province of Alberta. And we also have a great studio audience here to listen up and check everything out. Would you please welcome on air and live Brent and Mary Kassian. Please, welcome. All right, guys. You two are just doing so much stuff. You've been together 33 years.
Yes.
And you, Mary, have written so many books. And Brent, you are the chaplain of the Edmonton Eskimos. Let me start, because as we record this, we are in playoff season in the CFL. And Edmonton and Calgary have a big game coming up a few days from now as we shoot this. How many years have you been involved with the Eskimos?
Well, this is my 16th season.
Wow.
And I'm pretty happy I cannot be traded during the playoffs. So there will be no little ticker on TV, no Chappie traded to Winnipeg. And they call me Chappie, actually.
I read that in my
CFL.
notes.
Yeah, it's Chappie.
Now,
So
should I call you Chappie from this point on?
It'd probably be easier. I almost live with that
I don't
name
want any
pretty
tension
much,
between us in the interview.
Definitely not. Season 16. Hard to believe.
How did it happen for you? How did you get started in that?
I got a call from Athletes in Action. They're the official supplier of chaplains to the Canadian Football League, and they're part of Power to Change Ministries, formerly Campus Crusade for Christ. And I got a call out of the blue from the National Athletes in Action director. They're coming through Edmonton. I thought there was a fundraiser going on, an outreach fundraiser, and so we got together and we sat down with the director, and he said, "Have you ever considered being a chaplain to a pro sports team?" And I said, "No." And then he asked, "Well, would you consider that?" And the process began of working through that, praying through that. And you had to go through candidacy with Athletes in Action in a training, and then
Sure.
Had to be vetted with the Edmonton Eskimo organization, and 16 seasons later.
Now, Brent had been working as a bivocational pastor, so ministry has always been part of our lives, and he's always been involved in discipleship.
And I was kind of this hybrid mutant pastor, right?
I was doing
practicing sports medicine and pastoring.
The hybrid pastor.
Yes,
Sounds like
pastor.
a major motion picture, doesn't it? Soon to be released. All right, so somewhere by the grace of God, you met Mary, and you convinced her to marry you. Now, how in the world, Chappie, did this happen?
How did I marry up?
I mean, you outpunted your coverage, clearly, to borrow an analogy. I mean, so you this lovely lady, you got her attention, and 32 years ago, you guys got married.
Well, we didn't start off, it was not love at first sight for either of us.
Talk about that a little bit more.
Well, this could
we
be
got lots of time.
This could be a therapy counseling session.
That's why we're here to add value.
A friend of ours that was a drummer was looking for a keyboard singer that was Mary, and a guitar player that was me.
Yeah.
And that's how we first met. It was actually in an outreach band. We were sharing Christ in a band that would go out. We played beaches, prisons, everywhere, high schools, everywhere.
We used to put big stacks up on the beach and play to the bikers.
To the bikers.
So we actually met in a ministry context. Yeah. That's how we got to know each other.
Well, you're a lovely couple, and we're so thankful. We're featuring Albertans who are difference makers around the world. And Mary, your writing and speaking ministry truly is global now. Mm-hmm. How would you, more than 20 books would you have written now?
You know, it depends. It's hard to get a number on it because some of them are videos, some of them have been books and Bible studies.
When it comes to resources, let's say original resources that you've created now.
Well, certainly over a dozen, a dozen to 20, probably 20.
And how did it start for you? Because you do, every month you're out somewhere speaking in conferences here or in North America, somewhere around the world. You also are an adjunct professor at Southern Baptist Seminary in Louisville, Kentucky.
Yeah.
I mean, it's an amazing story. How did this gift get discovered, and how did people discover it?
Well, we met in a ministry context, and so ministry has always been a part of my life as well. I grew up in Edmonton. was part of a little Baptist church over on the south side. Was where my parents took us kids. Yeah. And so I was involved in ministry at a very young age. And by the time I hit college, I was involved in discipling young women. And I had been discipling young women and talking about the whole issue of what does God want for us as women. And this was a hot topic on campus in the early 80s, late 70s. And I put together some resources for these women that I was discipling, my Bible study group of gals that I was discipling. And because I couldn't find anything that really met my needs for discipling them. And so I just put together some materials. And Brent said, you know, this has been so helpful for these gals. Why don't you just get it published? And being, what was I, 22 years old?
Really?
Thinking, okay, sure.
Yeah.
And so I sent it off to some major publishers, and it was accepted for publication, which in retrospect was really the hand of God, because there is no way a 22-year-old girl from Nowheresville, Alberta, really, you know, can break into the publishing industry that way. And so that really was God's hand.
It's an amazing story. You were 22, so this only happened, what, 3 years ago?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah.
Something like that.
Mary, that is amazing, but interesting too. And you have a series, it's Girls Gone Wise.
Yes.
Tell us a little bit about that. And then I want to speak a little bit more about your relationship and the power of encouragement of a husband to a wife, wife to a husband years ago. So talk about Girls Gone Wise for a moment.
Girls Gone Wise is just the ministry, and it's actually the name of one of my books is Girls Gone Wise. And it's a study of Proverbs, foolish woman versus a wise woman, and geared really towards a college demographic, although it's much broader than that. But really addressing the question of how do we, in this culture, as women and as younger women with all the pressures facing young women, you know, just in terms of morality and ethics.
Enormous in our society. How do we live as women of God who are wise, making good decisions, and making good decisions in relationships, and good moral decisions, good ethical decisions, also good decisions just in terms of what it means to be a woman, because there's enormous pressure in our society trying to define what exactly that means. As we see this on air, there on the lower third there is your website, and people can find resources. Some might be available even with our ESTORE at Crossroads. Mm-hmm. You are connecting, you are resonating though with women, and it's clear. When you're going out there and you're ministering today, it's shocking, I would think, to see how different it is maybe just from 20 years ago. I mean, when we were in formation, there were pressures, but it's exponentially more so now.
It is exponential. When I pray with young women after a conference and minister to them, I am shocked at the amount of baggage that these girls have at age 18, 19, 20, 23, 24, and things that you would have never seen 30 years ago, 40 years ago. You know, they've had abortions, they've had a number of live-in boyfriends, a number of serious relationships. Some have been married and divorced. Just the issues are enormous, and the need for Christ is enormous, and the hunger for just answers is enormous.
We're glad you're out there and that you're answering those from a biblical worldview. To your left there is the love of your life.
Yeah.
While your wife has found a wonderful platform nationally, continentally, and globally, you, though, have been staying right here. I know you have opportunities to leave the province and have influence, but you, for all these years, have been ministering to a football team with changing personnel and injuries and contract negotiations and tensions between coaches and players and all of that stuff. You've been right here just living life with this ball club.
Yeah, pretty much. And it's, I tease Mary, she, will go to speak in Australia, and I go, an hour to a small town northeast of here to speak. But it's a local ministry, and a chaplain, people are asking, what does a chaplain really do with a sports, pro sports team? So you're partly a doing some things that a pastor would do. You come alongside people, you meet them, young men, where they're at, or the coaching staff or administrative staff where they're at, and you come alongside them when they say yes to minister to them. And then you are always creating creating ways to try to share Christ with people who may have some interest within their particular context. And the longer I've been doing this, the more a lot of cliches that you hear in sports, those become true just in life and kind of in our church life and our spiritual journey as well. So, a famous one as well, you can only control what you can control, which is your attitude. Yeah. That's a common sports cliche, but that really is a kind of a biblical principle.
It's a life principle.
And so that can be a bridge for, let's say, a player where maybe things are not going well, maybe they're not getting the playing time, maybe they're on the practice roster, and there's opportunities to talk about, disappointment, confidence, the kind of things that would affect, I think, men in general, but in the sports world, in the football world, it's like every year is like 7 years of a man's life. It's like a dog years. It's
a cycle.
It's just, everything's condensed, and in a season you can go through the highs and lows of a regular guy's life in 7 years. Emotionally, and certainly physically, the pounding the guys take. So
we have a minute left. What is your latest work that we need to be aware of, or what's on the stove being cooked right now?
On the stove being cooked is how not to be a weak-willed woman. So taking a look at scripture passage and unpacking it for women.
Can you take 30 seconds and speak to the power of a husband encouraging a wife?
Well, I think you want to come alongside your gal, if you're a husband, a significant other, and just encourage them to be strong in the gifts that the Lord Jesus Christ has given them through the power of the Spirit. So I've encouraged her to write and to speak, and behind her 100% all the time.
You really model so many wonderful things. I thank you for coming by and spending time with us today.
It's a delight.
You're loved and respected, and come back and see us again.
Thank you for having us.
And we'll come back out here and see you, we promise,
yes.
all right? Brent and Mary Kassian, let's please thank them for being with us.
Thank you so much.